for this thing. And a workaround is next video. So what I did was, I kind of have a workaround for this thing. And a workaround is not exactly a fix, but what I did was I created a little method called viewCart. And this is inside of the cart summary component. And I included a router reference, right? So I imported the Angular router up here. And then what I said was, let's navigate by URL whenever we go to this method to the cart, which is kind of similar to us using router link, okay? And then inside of our HTML, instead of using router link, I changed it to a click event. So I said, okay, if it's not disabled and we click on the button, then we call the viewCart method. And then what happens is this navigate by URL will trigger. So how does this work now? Well, it looks like this. Let's just refresh. We go to the books, we add to the cart. Let's keep shopping, right? And then if I click this button, hey, that's the way it's supposed to work, like this. Okay, so we can actually see the cart in all of its beauty right here. Okay, so we can continue to add to the cart. And then the next part, which we're going to do today is, or this video is checkout. And we're going to flesh out this checkout component to make it work. So that's what we're doing in this next video is we're going to create the order model, right? And modify the data source to allow our order to be saved. We're also going to create an order repository similar to the book repository that we made earlier. Then we'll update the model module, is what it should say here, to include the order model and the order repository. So that's something that we have to do. And we'll flesh out the checkout component to connect with the order model and order repository, and fleshing out means let's make the HTML as well for this part. And at the end of the video, we'll be able to submit an order to be shipped, and we'll have some kind of temporary thing that says, hey, your order has been shipped. That'll be at the end of this video. Let's check this out and see how that all works. All right, so let's get to it. So the first thing is we want to create a new order model, right? So again, inside the model folder, we have a couple of models. We have a cart model, we have a book model, and we have a book repository. And now we're going to make an order model and an order repository. Let's do that. So we'll do the new file, which is the order model, order.model.ts. We could also scaffold this out by hand, but I figure this might be easier. Let's do the injectable stuff. So at injectable, right, which should include our injectable thing now. It kind of does it automatically, or automagically, as they say. And we're going to export a class that's called order. And the order is going to be the following: a public ID. We'll make it ID like this because we know we're going to carry this forward into the on the API side. We're also going to have a public name for the order, right? Which is the name of the person that's taking the order. We could have first name, last name here, but we're just going to take name at this point. We're going to have a public address and a public city and a public province and a public postal code. And we're also going to have public country and how about we spell country properly? And we're also going to have a public shipped, which is going to start off as false. So this is the order model. Again, an order model is just a schema of what the database is going to look like at the end. In our constructor for the order model, we're going to pass in a public cart, which is going to be of type cart. Okay. And we're also going to have a clear method, which can clear the order. And we're just going to say that this ID is equal to null, and that this name is equal to this that address. And then we'll do it all in one line. We're going to say that this is dot city, and that's equal to null. You can do that with JavaScript where you say that this is all null, right? This dot province is equal to this dot postal code, which is equal to this dot country, which is equal to null. We're just basically setting everything to null here. This is just a way of doing it. Alternatively, you can just make all these null on their own line. If you're not comfortable with that, you could just say, grab all this, and then if you don't like this methodology, this is like doing this. I'm fine with this too, right? I mean, if you were to do this on multiple lines, I think it's just as good. It's not as compact, but at the end of the day, all you're doing is you're just resetting everything to null, which is, once we set it to null, it's like you remove or clear the memory for all this stuff. And finally, this dot shipped is equal to false, and this dot cart dot clear. I'm going to clear the cart too, which is the way to go. So that's the clear method. I just changed it so that maybe it's a little clearer. Maybe you might like this more. I definitely like this more than the single lines that we include in the PowerPoint. That's just me. So that is the order model. Next is the update to the static data source. So even though we're using a REST data source, we're going to use the static data source for now as well. Static data source, we want to make it so that we create something called save order. And it's the save order is going to take an order which is of type order, and it's going to return an observable of type order. Of type order. I'll be okay. Which is, we're going to console log it. Console log JSON.stringify order. Let's just see that order, whatever that is for now. And we're going to return from square brackets order. Okay, so that is the save order. And now let's make sure we have everything up here. We have order. We have observable and from before, because we used it, all right, in the past up here, right? Here's the observable. Here, this one's a book, and it's only one order that we're returning, whereas this is returning a book array, right? And we're going to say order from the order model and observable from RxJS. So this is all good to go. And now, once we've updated the data model, right, or the data source, the next thing we want to do is we want to create a new file called order repository, and that's going to be inside this model folder. So new file, order.repository.ts. And inside the order repository, we're going to make it injectable. Let's add another space at injectable, right? And we're going to make it so that we export a class called order repository. And we're going to make a private orders object, which is of type order array. By the way, when we do order, we want to do an order array like that, so that way we can get that in there. Okay, so you can see how that's working out, how it automatically scaffolds it out for us. Then we want a constructor where we have a private data source, which is of type static data source, this one. Okay, which kind of includes that. And then we have get orders, which is of type order array. That's what it returns. And we're going to return this dot orders, which makes sense. And we're also going to save order, and we're going to take an order in that we want to save. We're going to use an observable, this one, of type order. And we're going to call this.dataSource.SaveOrder in order for us to do that and pass in the order that we're saving. Let's make sure things are in order. No pun intended. I probably, just to go with what the book is suggesting, we should just put it in this order. Not a big deal. And that is the order repository. Think about the order repository to me as middleware. Again, I kind of go through here. We share the order repository so that we don't directly access the order model itself. It's kind of a middle layer between the order model and the other methods or components that connect to it. Okay. Next, what we want is we want to change the model module. So the model module is here. This is the order module or the model module. And what we want is we have HTTP client module here. We have the product book repository, the static data source, the cart, and then what we want is the order and the order repository right here. So the order and the order repository, this one, okay, which adds that in. And that creates most of everything we need, right? Connects everything as we see fit. Order model, if you see this yellow, it means that there's some kind of linting issue, and that's this. And the way to fix this, like I showed you last time, is just to go quick fix, disable the rule, because we don't care about it being yellow all the time. We're going to use _ID so it matches with our future fit for our data, the way we're going to connect it on the back end. Okay. One thing to note is it also gave us this throw statement. We don't need it. We don't need this throw statement. So if it by accident gave you that, it's because we tried to make something that was incomplete, and that's totally fine. You don't need that throw statement. All right, so that is the order, the order model, the order repository, and connecting to the model module, feature module for the model. All right, so cool. We want to be able to flesh out the checkout component.ts now. So I'm going to go back to the bookstore. We're going to go to the checkout component.ts, which is pretty simple. And we're going to enhance what we have here already. So checkout component on init, we want to go into our couple things we don't have. So one is our order sent is going to be equal to false by default. Our submitted is going to be equal to false. We're going to set some stuff up in our constructor. What we're going to do here is we're going to say we want a public repository, which is of type order repository, this one, right? And as well as a public order, which is of type order, this one. So that it adds in all our references up here, right? Which is what we want. Yeah. So far so good. Then we're going to skip ng on init for now. We're going to go to submit order. This is the method we're going to use. We're going to use a new form called of type ng form. So again, it'll add this reference to ng form. Again, what you may want to do is if you want to follow the way we were doing it, we're going to take this and put it up here. So that is part of the kind of Angular module, which has nothing to do with us, right? And then it's of type void. And what we're going to say is that the this.submitted is equal to true if my form valid. If the form is valid, we're going to validate the form. because we're going to have a form in here, is this dot repository dot save order. We're going to pass in this dot order, and we're going to subscribe to the results where the order is, for now, the order is this dot order dot clear. We're going to clear the order, and then this dot order sent is equal to true, and this dot submitted is equal to false. So the submitted order is false, but the order is true. The order sent is true. So we haven't submitted it, but we've sent it. It requires a space, and I think that takes away everything we need, or we update everything we have on the checkout component now. And now we're going to do a little bit of CSS. So on the CSS, the first time we're doing CSS, and what they've done here is said, look, on input, ng dirty flag, so ng invalid. So when the form is invalid, we want our border to be 2 pixels solid, and we want the color to be FF0000, which is red, right? And so it's going to make it red. It's going to basically put a red box around any form element that is, or anything, actually anything that has a dirty flag on it, and it's going to be something that Angular adds in when there's a problem. ng-dirty .ng valid. So when it's valid, instead, what it's going to do is it is going to change the border to 2 pixel solid, and they have a number, so it's some 6BC 502, which is kind of like a greenish color. You can see that preview here in Visual Studio Code. So that's all this is going to be. So when the form is invalid, it'll make each element red, and when the form is valid, it'll make each of the form elements green that are valid for each one. Okay, because that's what these are. These selectors select all elements on the form that have all input elements that have invalid or valid. All right, then the component HTML itself. This can't be like this anymore, so this is going to go. It's going to be a div with the class of container-fluid. Again, we're going to change this later on. And inside that, we're going to have a div with a I'm just making sure that we're good. A div with a class of m-2, so margin 2, text dash center. So there's not going to be that other stuff that's included. And inside of that div, there's going to be an h2 tag with a thanks message. And next to that h2 tag, there's going to be a paragraph tag. And inside the paragraph tag, we're going to say, thanks for placing your order. Okay. And beside that paragraph tag, there's going to be another paragraph tag where we're going to say, we'll ship your goods as soon as possible. And we're going to change goods. We're going to change goods to books, because that's what that is. We got a bunch of books we're going to ship over, right? And this is another p tag, by the way. So p tag with a information like this, okay? And then finally a button tag plus a button with a class of button dash button primary. I know it's long. And then with a little message that says return to store. And then let's see what happens when we click the button. There we go. So that's kind of what we get. Let's fill in the blanks. So our div with a class of m-2 text center, that one, what we want to do is we also want to use an ngIf. so a conditional. We want to say if the order sent, if order sent is true, right? Only then do we want to make this available to us, this whole div tag. Otherwise, we want to ignore everything that's in here whatsoever. In the button, for now, what we're going to have is a router link, which is here. So I'm going to say router link. We're going to see if that works for us. And it's going to be slash book list. So back to the book list is what's going to happen, right? Which basically is the first part. So this whole div tag is conditional, right? Next is the form. So the form is going to happen. Form, and this will be the form, right? Form with a class of m-2, so margin 2, right? And inside of that, we're going to have a div with a class of form-group. Instead of that, we're going to have a label with a name in there, the name label. Besides that, we're going to have a input with a class of form-control. And I think that's good. I'm not going to go further than that because I think we're going to have to add too many things after that. All right, so here's our label. There's our input. And then there's our div tag. Okay, so that's how we start. So starting with our form, we're going to wipe away action. We don't care about this action. But we are going to make it an ng if, again, a conditional. Ng if. We're not going to show the form unless we don't have an order that is sent. If we don't have an order sent, then we can show this element. Again, conditional statements, the way they work is if you include this and if this isn't true, if this fails the test, then this whole form element is not even included in the as we build up our document. Then we're going to say form, and this is the Angular form stuff, is equal to ng form. Okay, so we're going to say that we're identifying that this form itself is an of type ng form. And once we've done that, then we have those special things that come up. No validate is going to allow us to create our so we're not going to use the validation that's built into HTML5. So what's going to happen, that's what no validate does. We're also going to have an event, ng the ng submit event. And what the submit event will do is we'll say that on submit, we're going to submit order, and we're going to pass in the form itself, the whole form. That means all the form data and the parameters are going to be passed in here. All right? So that's what this line does. And then the next div with the form, we have a name. Label is name. We're not going to use the for part of the label because that's not what we're doing here. Input class is form control. Type, as an example, right now is not something that we've included here, so we're going to get rid of this. No type. We're going to default to text anyway. But what we are going to do is we're going to say that the name, hashtag name, this is again an HTML, sorry, an Angular form thing. The name is we're going to use is the ng model. All right, ng model, and name is going to be equal to name. Okay. So it says there is no directive with export as set to ng model. We're going to fix this later on. And this is inside here. we're going to go and put in square brackets ng model, and we're going to say that that is equal to order.name. We're going to make this part required. And so now it quiets down. So what is this? This is, again, this is two-way data binding. All right, that's what's happening here. So again, whenever we use our curly braces, double curly braces, we're data binding. This way is two-way data binding, right? And we'll talk about that later on. Next, span. We're going to use the span, and we need a class of text-danger. And the span is also going to be an ng-if, so conditional. We're going to say if submitted is submitted, right? And the name is invalid, right? Then we're going to make a little span that says, please enter your name. So this is the check that we're going to make. This is our own custom validation. Please enter your name. All right, so that is going to be the first input element, and that ends here in the div tag. We're not quite done the form though, because we're going to have other elements in there. The next one is a another div tag with a class of form-group, right? Inside that, we're going to have a label with a text of address. And beside the label, we're going to have an input with a class of form-control. And beside the input, we're just going to try this all at once this time. We're going to have a span tag with a class of text-danger, which also is going to have a little text that says, please enter your address. So this is the kind of helper text we're going to give, right? So that did more. And again, just like before, we're going to do in our div class form group, right? So notice that, okay, so this is the form, and this is our first element in the form. None of this will show up if the form is already submitted. Okay, so this is a conditional. So this is address, and the address is good. Input class form control, and then we're going to have the type. We don't care about that. And what we're going to put over here is the address, right, which is equal to the ng model. It's going to give us a bit of an error, and the name is going to be equal to address. So this is the property name that we're going to get. And just like we did before, we're going to do the two-way data binding ng model, right, which is going to be equal to order-address. So that's what that's going to be. And we're going to make that required. And we're going to say that the span is only going to appear when, so ng-if it's submitted. Actually, we just copy this, and now the address is invalid instead of the name is invalid. So this part here is the exact same, except now that the just going to go over here. Instead of the name is invalid, we're going to say the address is invalid. Okay, so that's going to be please enter your address, blah blah blah, and that is going to be the. Let's put this on the next line just to give us some same space, similar space to what we had before, and that'll be the span at the bottom. Okay, so this is going to be the next item. We're also going to need things for city, province, and so on. So let's make copy paste now for some of this. So copy. Let's see if we can do this without making a copy paste error. So form group again. This will be city. No, we don't need the for. That's for sure. We probably could have taken that out. this will be, instead of address, it'll be city, and the name is going to be city, and this will be order-city. And ngIf, if the city is invalid, then it'll say class danger, please enter your city. Okay, let's do the next one. Copy, paste, the next line. It'll be province. You get the picture. And this will be form control province, lowercase, and province name, sorry, it's equal to province. And order.province. And if it's city, province.invalid. And enter your province. Should be there. Again, hopefully we didn't have any copy paste errors so far. Alright, postal code is next. And it'll be zip or postal code because I can enter either one or the other. Doesn't matter. So this will be zip postal code, right? And the form control's name will be postal code. NG model, the name would be postal code. Postal code. And order.postal code. If submitted and postal code is invalid, then we're going to say that please enter your zip postal code. So it could be a postal, it could be a zip code as well if they're coming from the States. And then the next one. We're going to keep doing this. I know this is a little tedious, but these are all the pieces we have to add in, so why not? Country. I think this is like the last one. So this is country, and country will be here. So the hashtag basically tells you which of the items on the form that Angular will recognize, and the name is going to be the actual final variable that's going to be passed in, the data that's going to come here. So this will be order.country, country invalid, and then please enter your country. All right, so that's all the inputs. And then what we need at the end of the form is a div with the class of text center. And what we want in there is two buttons. A button with a class of button, dash secondary, and then m-1, which is margin 1. And this is where we're going to have to think about, do we need router link or not? Because the router links may not work again the way we have it. We may have to find a permanent solution for this. But it's going to be the back button. So that's going to be, as well as the back button, like I said. So we're going to come back to this back button in a second. And also it'd be nice to add some font awesome stuff here. Button with the class of button primary, and then m-1, margin 1. And we can say the type is equal to submit, right? And we can also specify that the text is complete order. And we can press this. You can see that that'll all come in. Nice, nice. All right, and so the only thing we have to add in here for the back button, or for the back, is router link, which I don't know if it's going to work, but hopefully we will. If not, we'll have to make it work like before. So those are the two buttons. Now, so one is order, complete order, and back. The order of the buttons we may have to switch around because I'm not sure from a UI UX perspective that is the correct order, like the back button on the left and the complete order on the right. It should probably be the other way around, but that's just from my perspective. All right, so now we have the order. Let's check out, do the exercise by going to the button and see what it looks like. So again, I want to add Dune, continue shopping. I want to add Ring Worlds. We got those two things there. I want to go checkout, and now we have to fill out some information. So let's fill out some stuff, and this is really long. We need to fix this. We'll say Tom Smith. It's not my name. And we'll have an address, 1 Tom Boulevard, right? Sure. Boulevard. And we'll say the city is Toronto, and province is Ontario, and we'll say that it's M9P4G5, random postal code. We can also add a space in there. And then the country will be Canada. And if we click complete order, if everything goes well, then we should get that thing that comes up that tells us that things are good, the submit button working. But here we have a problem. Let's take a look and inspect and see what we got. So what is the problem? Do we have a problem? We do. We do have a problem. So it says live reloading enabled. We have a type error. This data source .save order is not a function. Save order is not a function. So that's in what we're getting right now. This .data source .save order. So that means either we forgot to save something. Have any open editors that are not saved? No, we're good. So that is this .data source .save order, which means that is in our checkout component.ts. And the data source is from the repository. Because save order, this order, subscribe, that comes from the repository, which is inside of our model. So this is our repository, and it's order.ts. And it says this .data source .save order, which is an issue, save order. And notice it says that this .data source .save order is not a function. Data source .save order, right? And we're passing in order. So that's the issue. So it's on. It says core.js 4197, but it's really right. We know how to. This is kind of like our stack, right? Call stack. So you see that we've called order repository save order, checkout component submit order, and we can go through here. So this is how it works, way at the top. So checkout component submit order, order repository save order. This .data source .save order is not a function. Okay, so let's see what the data source looks like. So static data source save order is here. And looks like we're looking for an order. Save order is a function, right? Right there. So that looks like it's all okay. But remember, we may have to rejig this and relaunch it. But we also want to make sure that the save order method has been passed in an order. All right, so let's see how we get that information in there. All right, so going back up the line, our checkout.ts, our component.ts here is accessing save order. This is correct. We're getting an order that we're getting from the form. The form itself is giving us the order, right? So this .order is the object, right, that we're going to store here. It's public, right? And we're going to pass in the order that we're going to get from the form. So only if the form is valid did we go here, right? So, and then we're going to clear it, and we're going to say the order is sent, and then we're going to submit it. So that's what this is. But what happens in the component, in the HTML? Where does that order submitted? So here's submit order, form, right? So the submit order comes in through here. It goes to the form. It says, and the submit button itself this is what completes the order, right? And then it takes all the information, all the data from the entire order that gets kind of propagated up, okay? And we get all this information from the checkout. This is validating who we are, right, as an example. And then what we want to do is, if the order is sent, if that's true, right? Now the order is not sent because we didn't complete this part. ng submit order form. We're passing in the form itself to this thing, submit order. Now notice it says submit order is here. We're passing in the form, right? Good. So how then do we set up the order itself? Where does the order itself come from? Because that's important. Okay, so, and that's in the .ts file, right? So here's the order. Let's make sure we've checked through this. I think I know what the problem is off the top of my head, but we're going to figure this out together as always. And we've got this. The ng form is here. It's submitted as true. Form is valid, which it is. Save order. This.order. Subscribe order is completely true. And order clear. Order sent. Submitted. Yeah. Form valid. All right. So let's do this. So when we come to this point, we're going to try it again. We're going to do a console log. And we want to print out the order itself. So this order thing, this.order. I want to see what is the order that we're getting, because I have no idea what this is going to be yet, right? Because before we pass it in, we're getting an error, right? So let me do the following. We want to save this. And we're going to go back and try it again. So let's take a look at this. We'll leave this open this time for troubleshooting. So we'll add one to the order. And this time we'll just check out. And we'll add some information here. So we'll say Tom, address 1 Tom Street, and Toronto, Ontario, and then M9B5G5, some other random address, Canada. And then what we'll also do is we'll submit the order, or complete the order here by clicking complete order. Okay, now that's what we get. So we get the following. It says the order is 1 Tom Street, cart. Okay, so we're actually getting this information. So that's what's coming back out of here, right? So this is part of the information we're getting, right? So cart, shipped, name, that's the order, right? Tom, address, and so on. This is all the stuff we've got. We've got some more data in there, right? We can't see it all. Address is here, 1 Tom Street. And then the cart price is $10.95. The lines module, we have a single book. We can't see that book right now because of the way it's been printed, but there it is, Dune. Okay. Some information about the book, right? We have our line total, which is $10.95, and then we have cities, Toronto, country, Canada, name is Tom, postal code, province, and shipped as follows. So we have the data. The data is coming through, right? So the data is coming from the form, no problem, as soon as we press it. It's just that when we send it, it's not sending properly. So that's something else. That's another issue. Okay, so now it says data source save order is not a function. So save order, this one, is not a function, it says. This.save order. And to me it is a function, right? Because we see that the data source is here, right? So save order, let's see how far it goes. Does it go to save order? Let's go to this definition now. So we're going to go, we got the order, so up to this point it works, right? And the data source is the static data source, which is this, all right? Let's make sure that we don't update the REST data source. Yeah. 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 So you see the REST data source. So we got a static data source here, get books, and we have the REST data source, which is right here, the REST data source. The REST data source, we don't have this kind of thing. We don't have orders yet. We haven't processed this part at all in the REST data source. So even though we're using the other data source, right? The static data source is here, and if we don't see this part, console log JSON stringify. We don't even come to this point. Why? It's trying to go here. Look at how it says get books here, and then our REST data source has get books here. We want the same structure for our REST data source, and I'm just going to bring up my notes, because I've got some notes on how to do this. And just bear with me while I do that. I'm pretty sure that's what the problem is. We have to put something in our REST data source, because we're using that right now, not just our other data source. So yeah, pretty sure. That's inside the model folder. Yep. And I'm pretty sure I'm right. Yep, we are. I'm right. Okay, so save order. The reason why we can't put it in here right now and it's acting up is because save order right now, it really doesn't do anything, right? Like at all on the other side. So REST data source, we're going to make a save order thing. We're going to say save order, just so that way we can have something right now. We're going to take the order in, and we're going to make it so that it is of type order. Let's make sure that it is like this. So there's order. And because we need to have that, right? And then it's going to return observable, right? So this is going to be observable. And the observable is going to be of type order. And we're going to say for save order is we're just going to print it out. So we're going to return this.http.post. We don't have this. It's not going to really work for us. We're going to post the order for now. And we're going to say this.base URL plus orders, because that's what it is. Okay? Which is just going to, there is no other thing we can do here. All right? And what we're going to do is pass in the order. So this is not going to work. And what we want to do here is just print out console log, just like it says in the static data source, because it's not going to do anything. We're just going to do one of these. So we can stringify this order, and so we can see what it looks like here. That should do it. It's not going to work. We're going to get another error here, because in our backend, if you notice our backend here, way at the top, it says we have a endpoint called orders, and this endpoint called orders, it doesn't do anything right now. I mean, literally, it's just going to post to orders, and well, it's not going to really return much. Your order is going to be empty, because if you notice in our data source, which is inside of our data.js, the orders is just literally an empty array, right? So this isn't going to do much right now, but that's okay, because we just want it to kind of somewhat function right now, or just get through without an error. So let's see what we're going to get when we do this. So we think we've got everything saved. Let's get back and try it again. So again, we're going to add one order. And what we're going to do is we're going to check out. We're going to add some data. And Canada. And then we're going to click on complete order. That's good. That's what I wanted. And it says thanks. So, okay, so how did we fix this problem? Why did it fix? How did it fix? Well, here's something. Because we're using our REST data source, see the REST data source is something we're accessing. We're not really doing anything at this point in terms of saving the information. We can't save the information. But what we're doing is we're showing a list of data that we're getting from the REST data source. So if I actually go to localhost 3500, and if I go /orders here, you're going to see that we're going to get, if I go, first of all, if I go book list, we're going to get this. That's a book list, right? But if I go orders, nothing. Why? Because there's nothing in there. There's nothing in the orders. The orders literally has nothing. There is nothing in the order. But this is what our order would be looking like when we send it off to our data and to our back end. Okay, that's what our order looks like. So pretty cool. I think what we've got is we've got a pretty good connection, and the reason why this was able to work, if we click return to store now, it should take us back. So all that works nicely. And then our order gets cleared up, and it looks like we've processed our order on the front end. Okay, that's what it looks like. Now for the next thing we need to do. So far we've been dealing with dummy data. Okay, dummy data. And what we want to do now is connect to a real data source. We want to convert our Express API, right? That's kind of a next step for us, to convert the Express API into something that we can actually use, right? So we're going to handle this in the next video. But let's recap what we did in this video. Okay, so, and we also want to clean up some of these views. They look pretty rough. Like, you know, they're really long and wide. And especially when we come here to the checkout, this is like so huge, right? We want to make this a little nicer. So that might be something we do next. We make this a little nicer looking than what this is looking like right now, because this is pretty ugly, right? But all these buttons work. The continue shopping button, the shopping cart button now, everything works as it should be. So this is the front end responding and working properly with a mock API in the back end. Remember, this is the API that we're using. So if you look at the back end, it's this. We want to replace this. Notice how it says orders/orders 401 unauthorized. That's what 401 means. And why? Because what we're trying to do is post. We're trying to post to 401. And if you notice inside of our model, right, which is on our our auth middleware model, we have posts, but we don't have API orders, right? API orders, we don't have anything like that. And we don't have any capability right now of posting. I could, if we made a GET request instead of a POST request here, that would totally come up. We would see it, right? But we don't see that right now, and it's going to be a POST that we're going to do eventually. Okay? So that's why it gives us 4. But it doesn't matter to us. We've done our front end. We've taken care of the front end, and now the next step is for us to connect the back end, right? Because we've done all we can, we've gone as far as we can go with the back end being mock data at this point. What we want is to start testing it with live data at this point. This is where the two teams would come together. If you had two teams working on a front end and a back end, right? Let's say one team would work on your Express server and the other team is working on your Angular components. They would come together now and we would communicate with each other and make the back end into an API, which is the next step. See you in the next video.